and I'll give you the key. It's easy. Just keep on hopping, keep on rocking, and don't start stopping. It's everything you need just to walk the scene. And if you wanna make it better, you give it to me, I'll grease it. I believe for you, you wouldn't believe what I see in you. So don't stop, don't let the dream drop hop. Hold up and make it lovely, make it real, and make it yours. Don't stop.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today you just get me flying solo. It's been a little while since I have done a breather episode, although there's been some things that are on my mind that I think are long overdue to be talked about, and some things that I want to forward to you guys as far as ways of thinking go. So hopefully you find today's episode helpful. If you do, make sure you head on over to the podcast and leave a review. Those are so helpful to me, and I know I don't remind you enough, but they are very important in the success of this podcast and it being visible to other people. So please subscribe, like it, whatever platform you're listening on, leave a review. I'm also on YouTube, so you can subscribe there as well. Comment away. Those also help boost me in the algorithm so that this becomes visible for more people. And all of that is heavily appreciated. I know it seems daunting and you hear it on so many podcasts, but it really is what keeps us podcasters going. So today I want to talk about something that I think is really, really important. And it's something that's been on my mind because I'm currently experiencing it in my own life. So just a quick little recap in case you don't listen to the podcast or you're new. I basically have been dealing with a pretty nasty shoulder injury for about 2.5 years. And while I was prepping for the powerlifting world championships, about 5 weeks out, it decided to become almost unbearable anymore. And so we kind of babied me through the world championships. And after that, I knew that if I wanted to reach the goals that I had in mind, I was going to have to get my shoulder looked at, diagnosed, and treated. So I went ahead and did that. I had a procedure on January 9th where they attempted to repair my supraspinatus. And they told me that I would be back in the gym, starting to get things back at about week 6 and probably fully back into the gym by about week 8. And 4 months later, that was not the case. I actually got way worse and I was unable to move at all. I've had 3 MRIs. They thought nerve damage, all sorts of really crazy things, right? And when this first all started happening, I was eager to try to maintain the strength that I had because I had worked so hard for it. I was just coming off of a high from the most incredible athletic season of my life, essentially, right? So it was kind of like a roller coaster. Here we're at the top and now we're going for a ride downward. And I basically was trying to do anything that I could post procedure and while waiting for the procedure to maintain the amount of strength that I had in every lift, basically. And even throughout the first 6 weeks or so, I was doing my best, but I could not use my right arm at all whatsoever. So I was hoping there was going to be some kind of carryover. And so I was using my left as much as I could. And I think about 6 weeks into that, I was squatting with a safety squat bar, and that sits at about C5 on your neck, and my whole left side went numb. And I thought immediately that I was having a stroke. I was like, what is going on? What did I do? Am I bonking out? Did I not eat enough prior to this workout? Like, it was that extreme. I couldn't even put my weights away after I got done with my workout. I had to ask somebody to do it because here I had no right arm and now I don't have a left arm. So it was kind of scary. They sent me in for an emergency MRI, found out that I have an existing or a pre-existing neck injury. So that made things interesting as far as training goes, because here I had locked on to controlling the things that I can control. So upper body was a no. So what did I do? I started focusing on squatting and like maintaining my lower body strength. And here all of a sudden I can't do that at all now because I can't even use the safety squat bar. So it kind of felt like I was faced with one hurdle after the other, which I'm not going to lie, it was extremely stressful and really hard because I kept feeling like I would come up with a plan and I would start making progress and then that progress would get shot down, right? So it was a really tough time. And eventually it got to where I was in so much pain with my shoulder and having a hard time doing things that I started squatting and stuff, which was helping. Like I wanted to improve anything that I possibly could, right? But I wasn't really getting to train the way I needed to. And that was when all of a sudden I realized, guess what? You're not going to maintain what you had, right? You're not going to do it. And when I came to terms with the fact that things are going to be different coming out of this and that we are going to have a long recovery period and that we have a lot of unknowns going on, and to just control what I can control and do what I can do, that was when things kind of started to change around, right? And I had to have a mindset shift. And I think the really, really hard day was I've been working so hard with like a dowel to basically bench press, and I could bench press in that form of movement or that range of motion kind of okay with more minimal pain than some other movements. And so the first time I benched, I went super light. I was really weak. I had a lot of like shaking and things going on. The second time, it was like I jumped back in and I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to bench 200 pounds, but it'll be decent, right? No, wrong. I could barely bench 60 pounds. And that's when it all hit me. Like, even though I had been trying so hard to maintain things, I had definitely lost my strength, right? And that really actually became a blessing because it forced me to sit back and think of all of these things, right? And one of those things was, now I'm starting with a completely fresh slate. Basically, all the pressure that I put on myself was now disengaged because I knew I was no longer going to hit the goals that I had intended for the upcoming powerlifting season. And I kind of had to come to terms with that. And as I was doing this, I realized there is beauty in starting over. And I know that sounds crazy, but there is beauty in starting over. And I started thinking of how much better I could be now that I'm not starting at the top and I have to start over again, and how many ways I can do things differently than I did them before. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more excited I was. So I am working with a new coach, which I absolutely love. My other coach, he's my best friend and he's still helping me in lots of ways. But I started with somebody that is a specialist in rehab stuff and catastrophic injuries and things. And he started helping me, and I went down to Portland at O'Malley's gym and we worked out together and started evaluating what I can and cannot do. And he asked me what I had in mind as far as a date to compete again. And I really hated to put a date on anything because I didn't want to lower my expectations any more than I already had. But then I started thinking about it, and I had already been thinking about this process of dialing in my technique and making all my weak spots strong. And no, it's not glamorous. And yes, it takes a lot of time, and it might mean a lot of time before I reach my ultimate goal of hitting the platform again. And ultimately, I would like to compete at the Olympia, and there's a world record that I still have in my sights. As much as I want that now, and I want that instant gratification, it might land me back in the place where I just came from, which is a catastrophic shoulder injury. And it may not be a shoulder. What if it's a hip? What if it's a knee? What if it's something else? Because in the process of wanting to achieve these things short term, sometimes we have a tendency to skip the things that are really, really important. And this is huge when it comes to looking at progress, right? There's a fast way to do it and there's a slow way to do it. And the fast way might be a less steep trail. And if we're only looking at a snapshot of it, we can't see that that trail that is less steep and it goes to the destination faster drops off at the end like a cliff, right? And then we see this other one that's got like all these ebbs and flows and rocks and lakes and all these things that you have to go over. And you're like, oh boy, I wouldn't want to take that route. But if you look at the long-term picture, it gets you to the top of the mountain instead of falling off a cliff. So you have to look at things in a big spectrum. And so when I sat back and wanted to, it's hard. We all want to get to our goal and we want to get there really, really fast. And it's this way with weight loss. It's this way with our careers. It's this way with our health goals. Like there's so many things that this can be applied to where we want that instant gratification, but it may not be what's right. And for me at this particular time, putting a date on paper to jump back into things is not right. I'm not even actually fully healed. I've still got a lot of pain. I barely just started being able to use my arm again. Now is not the time to be putting dates on paper and rushing things, right? And if we put a date on paper, what are we going to do? We're going to do anything we can do to get to that goal at that date, even if it's compromising things or potentially setting you up for more of a catastrophic injury or not healing correctly. So the more and more I chewed on this concept, the more and more at peace I was. The pressure was off. I didn't have to perform a certain way anymore, which I put a lot of pressure on myself, folks. If you haven't figured it out, I'm very type A. I like things done perfectly, and I like to be a high achiever. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, we are going to build the most solid foundation possible. And then when we are extremely strong and we have no weak spots in our technique and mentally we are together as well, because that was something that happened to me last year. There was a lot of doubts and stuff that would creep into my mind because I hadn't been hitting the platform enough to be a person where it was like an everyday thing. Every single time I had to overthink it, which I maybe am an overthinker, but it wasn't second nature. So what if you could jump back into this and work on technique and work on your weak spots and work on making it second nature so that every single time you grab that barbell, you know exactly what's going to happen. Is that going to happen overnight? No, it's not. It's going to take some time. And so all of a sudden I realized the beauty of this whole situation. And it's the beauty of starting over and taking all the pressure off and knowing that if you achieve your goal and you do it the right way, it's going to be so much more gratifying. So essentially what I'm saying is sometimes we look a little bit short term on things and we have a tendency to say, well, this opportunity is never going to show up again, which is what I was doing. I was like, okay, I'm qualified for all these cool things. I'm never going to be able to do that. They might be in another country. Like there was all these things, right? But when I sat back and I actually analyzed it, it was like, listen, there will be other opportunities. They may not be this opportunity, but there is going to be some opportunity. And I feel like the opportunity in this is to overall become a better power lifter. Now, this can be taken in any form. It could be weight loss. Like, do you want to keep that weight loss or do you want to lose all that weight and gain 15 pounds back or 20 pounds back or 40 pounds back afterwards, right? Short-term gratification. Yes, you can push yourself. Yes, you can go harder. Yes, you might have that bikini body by X date or X time, but at what cost? Was it worth it if after that you gain all of that weight back plus 20, 30, 40 pounds? So I guess my thing that I want to get to you guys today is take opportunities to take your time. This doesn't mean opportunities to slack. I want to make this very clear. Okay. Little adjustments are fine, but we need to work on being 1% better every day, or 2 or 5 or 10. I mean, whatever your actual ability is to achieve the goal at a reasonable pace without rushing it. I think that is extremely important. So also take this as an opportunity to learn that there is no like failure and there is beauty in starting over. So if you have tried many times to achieve something, or maybe you've had a lot of obstacles get in your way, now is the time to take a step back and look at it and say, what can I do to become better every day without putting a date on it, right? And start over and start heading towards those goals again and not put a time limit on it. Do it right. So maybe for weight loss, this is like start to achieve better health goals, right? Maybe it's not about weight loss. Turn it around. Maybe it's let's start eating healthier every day. Let's remove one item from our diet. Okay, we succeeded with that. Let's add another thing. Like build on these goals. Strive to do a little bit better constantly and let that grow, right? And I kind of tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, you have this bucket and you've filled it with so much stuff. You've filled it with stress. You've filled it with poor food choices. You've filled it with lack of sleep or not drinking enough water. And now this bucket is overflowing and you're not able to achieve any of your goals. Plus, it's really hard to bail all of that water out of the bucket. So slowly start bailing the water out of the bucket. Remove gluten, change your nutrition, get better sleep. All of these things are going to lower the amount of things that are in your bucket so that when you do have a small volume of things, say there's only a couple inches of things left in the bottom of that bucket, you can now add things back in, like going out with friends, having a drink or two, maybe having some cheat meals here and there, and it's not going to make your bucket overfill anymore. So the beauty of starting over, I think it is an amazing thing. In my own personal journey, I have no plans right now except to start becoming as strong as I possibly can, doing what I can do, because I still have a lot of things that I can't do, but I have a lot of other weak areas that need to be improved outside of the bench press, which I know that's crazy because it's my favorite. And I don't plan on throwing any weight on the bar for a long time, even if I am able, because right now, if I build a solid foundation with this new house that I'm constructing, I'm going to have a fantastic place to live for eternity, right? I'm also going to be unflappable in the powerlifting world. So growing my foundation, building it on a nice, solid place, on a nice, perfect rock, essentially, instead of on sand. We've all heard that proverb, right? Then we're going to be so much better off. So currently for me, I am finding the beauty in starting over, which I think is an amazing thing. And it is my goal to get better at things that I didn't try to get better at in the past. So that will be for me working with techniques, starting to do things that I normally would ignore because I didn't really feel like it or I didn't have time. Building that solid foundation so that when I'm ready and I feel strong and I feel injury free, I can actually hit the platform with confidence and I didn't rush anything. And people do this with bodybuilding shows all the time. Actually, they're like, oh, I'm just going to set a date. This is the date. This is what I want to do. And they push their body and then they end up really sick afterwards. And I always prep my clients a little different. We say, okay, tentatively, what would you do? And let's prep you and then put you into a show. Because guess what? There are going to be bodybuilding shows and powerlifting meets and vacations and all of the things that we have on our schedule. There's going to be more of those every single day. We don't need to push ourselves for just one date. Why would you go to one of those and lock yourself into something when you're not ready? It doesn't make any sense. It's like taking an exam after you haven't studied. So I want to leave you with this. Find peace if you need to, and look at the beauty of starting over. Also, realize there is a big picture, and sometimes when we're only looking like at a snapshot, it can be very discouraging. But then when we zoom out and we take a look at where the destination is, it is worth it. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in and listening to my little breather episode. I really appreciate you listening every couple weeks to this podcast. It is really a passion of mine, and I'm hoping that it has helped so many of you. And let me know what you think. Find me on Instagram at Connie Begani. Reach out. Let me know if there's anything that I can do as far as bringing guests to the show or topics you want to talk about. I'm here for it. Thank you so much for joining me.